Special meeting, starting at 6:30. Roll call, please. Heather.
Alderman Motley.
Here.
Alderman Hudson.
Here.
Alderman Wilkins.
Present.
Alderman Stevens.
Here.
Alderman Rogers.
Present.
Alderman Magley.
Yep.
Okay, I have a full quorum. If I can hear everybody stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. At this time, I would,
Make a motion, we move appointments up before the draft budget review.
first and second to move the appointments up in front of the number 4, the budget draft, 5 to the front of 4. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. It passes. So that moves us to, we'll call it, I don't know, 3A, I guess, 3B, whatever. Appointment of I would take a motion for appointment of a full-time police officer, Andrew Duff, to the police department. So I take a motion.
So moved.
I have a first and a second to appoint Andrew Duff to the full-time police officer position. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Welcome aboard,
Yes, sir.
Officer Duff, I guess is what that be. You want to give us would you like to address the board and the folks here?
So I've spent the last 7 years of my career with Alderman County. I currently work under Sheriff Waller as a sergeant of the patrol division. I just thought I'd make my way over here. I've lived in and out of Centralia for probably the last 10 years, a little time in Thompson, a couple years in Centralia here and there. I'll bring my talents to the community.
One question, how PO'd is Mr. Aller over there?
He hasn't talked to me. He hasn't talked to me since I returned my letter.
Oh, is that right? Okay, so we need to drive the speed limit. No, he's a great guy. We're glad to have you. I'm sure you always hope that hate to see somebody leave because it means you're losing people, but, you know, everybody always wants, I think, people to have an opportunity to do something for their life that makes more sense. So hopefully that's the case, and welcome, and you'll be sworn in first day of the job, I guess, right? Okay.
Where'd you start?
So after the pre-employment
Tonight?
stuff is completed, but I'll send you all a letter or email and let you know.
When
That's
it's
all
approved,
done.
when it's all done, all the background, everything done.
Yeah,
Got
we just wanted to go ahead and get the appointment done. We actually thought we would have all the pre-employment screening finished, but with the weather last week, they weren't taking appointments. So that's why we went ahead and put it on this agenda, so that way, whenever it's completed, then we can get it in and get it started.
What does that put us at as far as staffing?
It's full staff right now
Okay,
with him.
with him, good,
Mhm.
good to hear. Come a long way, that's why I asked that question. I thought it was when we talked the other day, Heather.
With
So,
part-time people too?
We've got 2.
Nice job. I just want to say,
Yeah.
it's, I'm glad that we've gotten to this point because we've had some road to travel to get here. So thanks for your efforts and what you're bringing forward as well. And so welcome aboard. Police department looks like it's really on the right track and heading in the right direction. So thanks for that. That moves us now to item 4, the FY 2022-23 draft budget.
Okay.
And I think that puts you,
Yep, so I might go a little bit out of order, if that's okay, from what the agenda says. I have a few, anyway, as far as the handouts and stuff go. So you have a packet in front of you. I put the highlights in here, and this is just kind of goes over the budget. This is our draft budget, so obviously we can make some changes. I've already seen some things that I think that we can change. Revenue projections based on historic values and things like that. So we'll go over that as we go through this presentation. Do you want to turn that light off over there?
I can.
You might be able to see better. Can you still see over there? Yeah. Okay, you good? All right. It pops a little better. So this is just our agenda. We're gonna go over ARPA funding, future projects, capital projects, street overlays and sidewalks, fund discussions, and then other. And just have that open for anything that you guys might have at the end that we want to talk about or circle back to. So key highlights, when going through the budget, this year, our tax revenues were 10% over what we budgeted for FY 21-22. That's the second year in a row that we have come in over budget. We were able to replace the lost positions that we had. And then, the other thing I want to talk about is our low utility rates. I did a rate study based on 7 different cities, and I've got some more information in this presentation. And the reason I picked those 7 cities is they're close in population to us, and they all have electric, water, and wastewater utilities that they service. So there are a lot of cities that only have sewer, a lot of that only have water, not very many that only have electric. So I wanted to do something that was more similar to what we do and look at their rates. So this is the tax revenue comparison, and I did not pull all of the tax revenues. We have some more line items there for property taxes that includes some business surcharges and things like that. But those are not directly related to these property taxes. Those are just like lump sum payments that we get in every year. So these are the taxes that are directly related to personal property and real estate property. So historically, over the last 5 years, just on average, we're up 4.72%. This year, what we budgeted is only a 1% increase from last year. Property values went kind of through the roof during our last fiscal year. So that's why you can see that 18% increase from the previous year. Now, if you look at FY 2021 for our real estate taxes, and we're down 4.4%, but then if you go down a couple of lines, we are up 7.4% for delinquent taxes. So we kind of expected that. People were paying their taxes late. So we still received the taxes, they're just in a different line item because they were late. And we had a 27, almost 28% increase over average for delinquent taxes. First year delinquent and then second year delinquent. So do you guys have any questions about that? No? Okay. So just to kind of recap, the budgeted line item or the budgeted column is 1% higher than what we collected in FY 21-22, which I think is fairly conservative considering we're looking at those increases on those average increases on the sides, 4.72, 2.88, all that. And then this is sales tax. We have a 1% sales tax. We also have a gas and motor fuel tax, state auto sales tax. That's when people have to pay taxes on their automobiles. 75%, it says 75% tobacco sales tax. The other 25% of the tobacco sales tax goes into another fund that's reserved for fire safety projects. That fund, I think it has about, right now it has about $36,000 in it, but that was mostly because of that large donation that we had received, and then we paid off that fire truck that we had lease purchased. Typically, there's only about, I don't know, $5,000 or $6,000 in there at the most. So these are kind of all over the place, but again, revenues I just budgeted a straight 1% increase. This is where I thought we could maybe see some changes in the way that we budget, like our gas and motor fuel tax. We might need to budget that more at like 99% just to be on the safe side. It's not a whole lot of difference, but anyway. And then park sales tax, transportation sales tax, and public safety sales tax, those are our normal sales taxes. And obviously the public safety sales tax is, you saw that biggest jump that first or the second year, but it's remained pretty steady with the others. So, questions? You guys can ask me questions. Okay. So this is what we're going to talk about, the ARPA funding for projects. We have well over $861,000 budgeted for ARPA funding. So this is where we're going to have to narrow it down. We don't have to do it tonight, but we do need to be looking at what projects we want to fund and what ones we want to get rid of.
When do we get the rest of it? When we decide what we want?
No, they haven't said. So we don't know. I have budgeted it for FY 23-24.
We're guaranteed it though, aren't we?
They said we were, and we got the first part, so I believe we should get it.
I think that's probably smart to budget down the next year.
So this is just kind of a timeline of some of the things that we've already done. Number one, we did the hazard pay and we replaced the lost staff at City Hall. that finance clerk will start on this Wednesday. Marilyn Dick is coming back to be our finance clerk. Then number 2, the water meter replacement project. We were gonna provide half of the total project cost. We're budgeting half of that in in the upcoming fiscal year, and then the second half out of ARPA funding coming later on. It's a little bit different on the spreadsheet that you'll see, but I'm gonna change it because we haven't actually paid anything out yet. We were originally gonna have to pay about $50,000 this current fiscal year, but we haven't been billed yet. So I'm just gonna move that all over to FY 23-24 instead of just doing a part now and then part later. Makes sense. We talked about sewer main lining, so these are just kind of things that we really would like to see done. As far as city staff, $100,000 for 2 years for sewer main lining, so $200,000 of that $861,000. We talked about some cybersecurity enhancement, upgrade the audio and video equipment in here. We really think that we could possibly even live stream, if we look at the right equipment, live stream our meetings instead of record and then have to download and then trim them and then upload. It would just be, I don't know, how long have we had that video camera, David?
Oh, wow.
Probably 10 years,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
I love the old wow.
The only gotcha is that, like, in the beginning, where we could rely on the fact that it's gonna be trimmed before posted, we're gonna have to mind our P's and Q's a little more.
We'll just have to go live right
Or it
at
goes
time.
live.
Yep, right at time.
Say, hey, we're going live,
Oh, yeah,
and
no,
then it
no.
goes live, and
Right.
Yeah, but there's a lot that gets said in between too.
So,
But the Sonic Wall is a much better VPN solution. It has intrusion prevention services. There's a whole bunch of things that are really industry standards, so it may be a really good purchase.
Well, the dedicated time, you have to stay current with that because there's such risk for people's information that we take in and everything else. So it's an insurance policy to make sure we're heavily invested in that.
Well, we get hits from China constantly to like the TUNet, so everybody's trying.
yeah, they're trying
I've
to
had
get
several
into
of them
it.
go out to you all for.
TUNet is
suggestion where-
our whole entire
oh yeah, or
electric
did you
grid
need help with
system.
something?
So that's what all of our electric meters on. We've got
Yeah, it
people
comes from your
trying to-
name.
Yeah, well,
But it can remotely disconnect, so if it were to be compromised, it would be potentially bad.
Oh, yeah.
I'll underscore it.
So we would really like for that to be funded. And then, additional public safety, related items, and this could be police or fire. Obviously fire, we're looking at a fire truck later on, to the tune of, if we get a used one and we use our resources, $250,000, but if we have to go out and get a new one, what are we looking at for a new fire truck?
500 to 700,000.
Yeah,
And,
so
It's not
500 to
fine.
700,000. So, so those are some options, some things. I talked to Chief Hatton as well, maybe buying some, we've talked about dash cams, I don't know if that's really the route we wanna go, then less lethal weapons. He's talked about those, that might be something that we could use for, the money for as well, so. You wanna talk about what the less lethal weapons would be?
Yeah, it's just another option for, let's say you would have someone that's threatening to harm themselves or something. It shoots basically a beanbag, and it's less lethal for a reason as long as you hit them in spots that are considered, acceptable places to hit them, large muscle groups and stuff like that. So they're pretty effective. It's just another option. Say you had a dog that you needed to handle, and it took more than just a catch pole or something. It could be used for that. And these are really items that are in the realm of police equipment, just really not that expensive for the option to have it on the street. So,
And I think in the requested amount, I think we had 20,000 a year for police, for public safety. We could definitely move that around and maybe, change it. If we have some other projects that we're gonna take out, we could put more into that fund.
I would just like to add that once you get back up to speed, this is not stuff you have to buy every year. I mean, whether it stays serviceable or not is depending on how much use it gets. So a lot of this equipment is long-term use type of equipment, in my opinion.
What percent of our police department budget is our overall budget? Number?
For,
Overall.
general fund, I think it was,
25%?
Is it
it's
coming
more
up?
than that, I had that number at one point in time.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
We're
I'm
gonna
just
cover that
asking. I mean,
somewhere in this, or?
No, I didn't do that percentage. Give me just a second. But in your packet, there's a whole list of, projects for ARPA funding, and I did, do a priority listing, and then I added it for, FY '22, which is our current fiscal year, '23, which is what we're looking at, and then '24, which is the next fiscal year, so.
One question on that, on the sewer main lining, the total projected cost says 417, but the other three buckets are only 317. Is that a typo, or is it carrying over to another year?
No, I just didn't have it all budgeted out, we'll have to, I think I don't have our city portion in there.
Okay.
So I can fix that.
Page 34. That's even not,
It's towards the end.
Oh.
138,
Yeah,
back here.
like, probably the last two pages.
Wow.
So it's 46%. That's all of public safety, that's not just police.
Okay.
We have the solar benches on here, but I thought we had gotten some pretty negative feedback.
We did, but I just haven't taken anything off of this list that we talked about. I wanted to get your input, and if you're okay,
I
You-
think that's one of them we
to
did
take it
talk
off.
about, and I know it was on there, that probably that's one that you would probably earmark as, because of the cost of maintaining them and the value you get out of them, it's probably not a good investment for,
okay,
in
And I am-
this instance, so.
I'm fine with removing that. That removes
71,000.
49,000. That gets us closer.
You talked about just putting in charging stations at some of the different gazebo, or shelter houses and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, the shelters that are out in all the parks, if we could put
Yeah.
charging stations in there. And I think they all have electricity.
Yeah, that'd be easy enough. They're pretty expensive.
Yeah, I'd expect our electric department could probably handle that without much,
Oh, yeah.
I believe
without it
so.
being a truly budgeted item, with how easy it would be.
I think so. Outdoor park and activity areas at the golf course, I don't know if that's really something that we're looking at. But then we also still have in here the bathrooms down at our lot at Railroad and Rollins, and I'll explain why I think that we probably should not do that here in a second. Which we've talked about. Terry had an idea as well, so. Okay, so we'll talk about this first future project. Electric substation is something that we definitely need to be planning for. So I looked up the information for Wilson Street sub was built in 2008, and we have like a lease purchase agreement through Manu, which is through MPUA, and we pay about $13,000 a month for that substation. And I didn't remove that text, so I'm sorry about that.
I was wondering,
I know. Sorry about that. I did on the other two. Anyway, so that's what our original note. That was our original principal. $1,637,000 is how much we borrowed for that substation. So I looked up on data.bls.gov today to find out what the inflation rate since 2008 was, and it was right around 30%. And then it gave some estimations, and that was through 2020. Then it gave some estimations for 2021, 22, all the way through 24. So I added that inflation as well. So that came up to 36.19%. So if we are looking at building a new substation, this might be an estimated cost. just based on those inflation rates. And that's just principal alone. So, in the middle column, that's what we owe, that's the principal that we owe, so it's roughly 32 months left. Because we're paying about 11,000 in principal a month.
Are we gonna be proactive on this, or are we just gonna wait till it breaks down? I mean, what's the thought of that? I mean,
But that's why I'm bringing it up now, because I think we need to be talking about it now.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah,
But when-
Burkhart is the one. So we've talked about some different scenarios. I've talked with Mike Forsey and Matt Fowler both about some different scenarios. What if we just upgraded the Burkhart substation? Well, apparently that substation, everything has to be retrofitted to work in that substation. And we have engineers that come and service it every single year. They might come up monthly, I think, but it was annually. But it's getting so old that we can't find things, we're not able to easily retrofit. We had to change some switches out and we had to buy them from another city that just happened to have them in stock. Because we cannot find these parts.
Too antiquated,
It's
not-
very
it's not
antiquated.
good.
So upgrading that is not really an option. So then we're looking at location. If we're building, if Centralia is developing more north, we thought about trying to find a place more north because Matt was very confident that Wilson Street could take care of everything south of the railroad tracks. So anyway, we're looking at a location more north. What?
His eyes just got really big when you said that.
I know.
So what do? You bring a group in, it's kinda like the water plant and the DNR?
Yeah.
It's kinda like the
Yeah,
water thing,
it'll
but
be
just
the same
electric.
thing. It'll
Do the same thing.
Mhm. So I just wanted to bring it up. These are just some kind of really very preliminary numbers, but it's something that I think that we're going to start looking at in this year, this fiscal year, and maybe even bringing to you some ideas about engineering. We're looking at finally getting the RFQ. I finally have that done, finalized. It's been proofread, and it's about ready to go out. So we'll need to have an ad hoc committee for that, for our RFQ for engineers.
So
to
the
select
Wilson
on-call
Street one
engineers.
is approaching 15 years in age, is what you're saying?
But Wilson's okay.
It-
That's a good one. And we
We-
actually just added more
Yeah,
circuits there. But Burkhart, which is the
We've got
one over here by MFA, that's the one that
for the
is
growth and
outdated.
need, we need to think about what we're doing to replace Burkhart and upgrade to more
Mhm.
capacity.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing, right?
Yes.
For the future, but it's growing quickly.
And we're gonna need a location for it, so that's kind of
Okay.
some of the things that we're looking at. We have an idea about a possible location, don't have anything squared out, so I really don't wanna say anything more about it until I have some more information. But we have been discussing it, we've been talking about it for quite some time, and, I know we talked about it as a board for quite some time, but, staff is ready to really get a land together. So we may be looking at next fiscal year or the one after.
When the Wilson Street one was done, did we put anything down, or did we just borrow or pay, how did we do that? I mean,
I'm not sure, when I looked at the documents today, it said we had some money down, but it was like
does that
$20,000.
help?
So I really think that we were just paying for our bonding agent fees and
Fees.
things like that. But we have money in reserves for, if there were a disaster to happen, we could take some money from that reserve and put down on this to make it, maybe make our payments less. I don't know what the best option would be,
Look at-
but that's what our bond council would help us decide.
Yeah, we don't want to be house poor though.
Right.
Either, with the substation, we pay a bunch down on it, we don't have much reserve, and we could get caught in
Yeah.
a real problematic situation because
Yeah, right now we have about 745,000 in reserves.
that doesn't sound like a ton of money to me. I mean, it's good, it's healthy, but
Right.
one thing could eat $1 million quick.
Oh, absolutely. The storm of 2016
Sure.
took a lot of money. I
That's the
mean,
point, I mean, so.
probably 300,000, so. Okay. So another future project that, this is where our lot at Railroad and Rollins comes into play potentially, possibly a public safety building. I know Alderman Hudson toured the police station. Alderman Wilkins has been in many times, Magley said you've been in there many times, just talking to them, not in a bad way. Not in a bad way.
Now the real
Good and
story
bad.
comes out.
Anyway,
I'm the one who started laughing over it.
I know. I've had conversations in the past with Denny, and I have had recent conversations with Chief Hatton about, you know, what could we do, you know, a combined public safety building over there.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I really do.
I think it would be helpful, and it's still centrally located downtown. It'd be combined police and fire headquarters. And then obviously the location in Rollard and Rollins makes the most sense. We're looking at maybe a 5 to 10 year plan, but looking for possible grant funding opportunities for it. So obviously in the future, but something to start talking about sooner rather than later. If this is a project you all want to think we should move forward with. But then we would just decide what we're gonna do with that location and then the fire station too. So that's in the future. We don't have to decide anything right now. Utility rate comparisons. This is where I told you I did look at those 7 different cities to review and compare our rates to their rates. And I put the picture of electric on here because I think electric is something we really need to talk about. We have the substation project coming up. Possibly, I really don't think it's possible. Possibly, I think we have to do it. But so we're locked in at an electric rate until 2030. But think about that, that's only 8 more years. We're locked into that rate. And rates have kind of skyrocketed. They did for a while, and I think they maybe went back down. It's hard for us to maybe think about what the rates are out in the real world whenever our rate is locked in for so long. But I think it's important that we look at doing that because kind of like we had with our water and sewer projects, we needed these projects done. We had to increase our rates because DNR said we had to in order to be able to pay back our loans. And then we're looking at, 15 to 20% increases. I think that's hard on people. It would be better if we looked at gradual increases over the next 8 years instead of a 15 to 20% increase on electric rates at the end of the time.
We're at the needed threshold when it goes live,
Right,
the change over.
right.
And we've known our rates have been very competitive for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
so.
So we'll start with electric. So Centralia is at the top. Charge for 1,000 kilowatts. You're looking at, and then, so one thing I do want to point out is I only pulled residential rates because we just have one rate, regardless if it's residential or commercial. Other cities do different rates for different revenue classes, like commercial or residential, and they also do a tiered rate. We do a tiered rate for our water, so it's not impossible that we could do it for electric if we wanted to, just to keep those things in mind, if that's something that we want to look at. So, how we compare, we're actually, if you take the averages, which is the last line, we're not much lower than the average. For the kilowatt hour charge, we are about $6 lower per base fee, which is added to every single electric bill. And then overall bill, we're looking at, it says 118, so that's not those two added together. So, right now we're pretty comparable. But we really should look at bringing it up a little bit, I think, gradually. So, this is the water rate. We are quite a bit lower still on water, even though we've had several recent increases. So our base fee, I think that's where it gets us with water, is our base fee is so much lower. We just have a meter fee of $4.88. Now it does get bigger if you have a bigger meter, but I only just did, like I said, just residential. So this is a typical residential bill for water right now, if you had 1,000 gallons. that's probably the minimum, that is the minimum that you would have, so anything 1,000 and under is charged this
So
minimum
we're
charge.
far better than,
Yeah, so our rates are lower.
well, this.
Than the majority.
And then if that's something where if we added $1 to our base fee every year or something like that to get us to a more reasonable amount, it's a very small amount at a time, and
Right,
might be a way to do it and spread it out.
right. And you could even look at doing that with electric too. I mean,
How many services do we have in place in City of Centralia?
electric, we have about,
Right.
we probably 25, 26 maybe,
Between 24 and 26, I think. is what we might do.
but 22 at water.
Mhm.
I just know that we just recently talked about that,
Okay.
so I had that in my head, but about 22 for water. But that's, residential and commercial and industrial, all of those, so it's every single one. So then this is our wastewater rates, and we just recently raised those. Now this one, where we are different, is our per gallon fee. Well, it's not per gallon, this is per 1,000 gallons, but, most places you pay per 100 gallons, and ours is the same way, but this is what it would be if it was 4,000, for 1,000 gallons. So, overall charges, we're not that much lower, but again, we are lower. Look at the city of Odessa, their base fee is almost $45, $44.50. So, I'm making,
We paid $6 out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so we're a lot cheaper, but we are the lowest.
But you know, when you look at these fees, something you have to take into consideration, how good is their infrastructure that they have in place today, based upon the money they're collecting for their sewer, their water lines, or their electric grid, and they may be way behind the 8 ball on it. They may not even be close to being at a reasonable place that they're not at risk of having a third party resources out at some point, which all of we have happened. If you think about it, just recently over in Hallsville, so it's not an option you're gonna get pushed into. So when you look at these, you also take into consideration, what you have to look at is, where would they say they're at in the life cycle of their systems? True, I mean,
Right.
so, in comparing it, we're doing fine, I mean, in comparison, the average, but we know what we have here in town and what we need. And I think it's one thing that the town's done a pretty good job over the years is keeping up with infrastructure pretty well, right? So, you don't know what these other people, I mean, $6, I mean, who knows what's gonna happen there, so.
Yeah. And then sanitation rates. So, if you look at your budget, we are actually we're not breaking even on our rates, our revenue that we bring in versus the expenses that we have. We're not even breaking even right now. So I did a complete rate comparison. I don't think I don't know if that was in your packet or not, but I do have it and I can give it to you, or I can pull it up on the screen even. It's in the memo.
How far are we under not breaking even? Not very much, are we?
26,000?
We can,
Well, none of our rates can be subsidizing the cost of the service to the city, I mean, we've got to fix that. However, it is, but, and also, we're looking at, Mike's looking at least, actually, we're looking at the comparable, Heather and Mike and I talked about it a while back, but he's actually starting to get together information about, first you gotta get the ton cost, but then we gotta figure out what the lease would be to have the units and have one person type thing and crew of 2.
Yeah.
It would not be, it would be dedicated, it would be its own department, be its own cost center, right? So we're looking at that right now to figure out what that looks like in comparison to a third party and how much cost us do for the third party. So there may be some savings there, there may not be, but Mike seems encouraged in some of the things he's been talking about, so we'll get that back too, to maybe be helpful in us recouping some costs there.
we should be we need to raise, I hate to say this, but, you know, we shouldn't be eating anything on this deal.
So,
I can't imagine where we were back when we were paying, wasn't it 400,000 when we had our trucks, something like that? We saved an ungodly amount of money when we came to the way
Yeah.
we're doing it now.
Well, up front, you usually do in those things. You have to always, just like auto insurance, every 3 years you ought to check. We're
Yeah.
burying your head in the sand of what you're paying for that service. And that's what we're kind of doing here with this, right? I mean, sure, it's a lost leader the first year potentially in a lot of things, right? It's a tied-in contract. You gotta look at the cost of doing business over the whole course of the agreement. So that's kind of what we're looking at now, and looking through
It's
that.
gonna
So
get
you're right on the
worse.
money.
Yeah, it's
About
gonna
what
get
we're looking
worse.
at doing.
so, estimated for current fiscal year, we're looking at losing $20,000, $20,700, almost $21,000. And, so staff does a really good job of going through the Danes bill and billing for overages, but if, a dumpster has an extra yard of trash in it, like it's piled higher on the ground or something, they don't even pick up on the ground, but, they charge us for that. And so we are charging commercial customers now for that because we're getting charged for
They're
that.
charging us for each ton that they deliver over there. And
Yeah,
it's a bill that hits them and they pass it on, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. And then our residential, and then, you know, a lot of this has to do with, us increasing our recycling program and adding the recycling trailer over there that now gets picked up 3 times a week. And there's hardly ever any room in it. So it's being used a lot.
Did you ever find out if they're actually recycling that stuff or if it's all just being dumped in the trash?
I did not get an answer back on that.
Cause that,
Something we can check into.
We need
because
to
that's
check
like, I mean, I
into
don't know,
it.
if half of what we're spending the money on isn't being going for the environment,
Mhm.
because that's why you recycle, right? I mean, then what are we doing here? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, that's what, and if they, the way I've understood it, and we need to qualify, as I've heard from 2 or 3 people, Mike, and people talking about it, that if there's one bag of stuff in there that doesn't belong, it's trash, they don't sort through that. They take it over there and dump it in the regular refuge
that's
of the
right.
landfill.
That's
so-
the way I
They don't have time
understand
to
it
mess
too.
with it.
Well, because you don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
if
it's
one's
time.
in there, where's some others buried in there? I mean,
Right.
it's problematic, you know, I mean, I understand that.
So in the budget that I sent out, the draft budget, it does include a 5% increase in sanitation rates. But we are still going to be short $43,461 this year. So I do have what it would be, I mean, we would get an additional $10,000 if we raised our rate 7%. That still doesn't get us where we need to be. We're still losing about $10,000.
Yeah, but if we no
we're
longer
still
pick up
losing about
recycling, then
$33,000.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if
we've
we don't
gotta
do
go
recycling.
break even. I mean, as bad as it is.
Right, I mean, you can't run a checkbook with a negative balance running, coming in at the top to what's going out, right? I mean, we've got to balance that.
I mean, I've lived in communities where we actually had to contract as a resident with the trash company to do it. And you pay what you pay. They're gonna tell you what it is, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah, it's,
us consolidating it with everything, and the billing is great for our citizens, but we can't go negative every month.
is there any way, I mean, is there a comparison to other, like the same towns you had on the electric and the water? Is-
I can reach out and see what the
wonder
rates
what they
are.
do. I mean, I
Well,
wonder where we're at
The
on,
difficulty is in where the real, is the tonnage that moves around on you and what they charge at your landfill you're taking it to.
Mhm.
That becomes the big deal, because some of them have accelerators, if you bring, because they have to budget space for landfill for the year, annual, 5-year, 10-year plans of what they're gonna bury, what they're gonna put out there. So in doing that, they got a contract, almost like in a leased car, you can drive 10,000 miles. After that, they charge you so much a mile over that, and it's usually a pretty hefty fee. So there's all kinds of things when it comes to refuge that gets all over the page versus electric rates and
this is a
water.
problem that's gonna get worse, because people, you can't do anything with you gotta put it you have to take it away with the sanitation department,
What,
and they're running out of places to put it, and like, the landfills can charge anything they want.
Yeah.
so are you thinking that 10% gets us to a break even there? Before we talk about recycling, right? But at that point, we can always look to ease the burden on the taxpayer, the citizen, if we're at a point that we can. But I mean, and looking at what can we collect it for and take it back in-house, right? If that is a positive, then we can help maybe not have an increase that other people are gonna see over the next 3 to 5 years potentially, right? Or not as much.
Yeah.
We've got to vet that
I'll
yet and
find
find out, but
I'll find out what 10% would look like. I'll figure out what it would take to get us to break even. So I don't
It would
want,
be- we should-
I don't want anybody to think that this fund balance is going in the negative. It's not. We've just been slowly over time eating into our
it's not paying for
beginning
itself.
balance. It's not paying for itself.
Yeah, we need to pay for itself. I mean, I'm not worried about replenishing what we've lost this year, but let's
Get it to a point that
let's stop the bleeding.
Get even, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
I'll find out what that magic number is, and I will let you know on Monday.
When I get my bill and look at it, the bleeding will start again. What the heck?
So will everybody else's.
Yeah, it's gonna be,
It's gonna be that way.
One thing I wanted to tell you back on the electric substation, I'm sorry I didn't make notes on this. I have reached out to NPUA to kind of find out if they have any rough idea what substations, like any cities that have put in one recently, what that's cost. So as soon as I hear back, I'll let you all know.
so when we think about the other three we've looked at, since we've talked about sanitation.
Yeah.
Electric, and everything. I mean, I'm assuming electric's the one that we need to address probably more than the other two at this point,
I agree, yes.
with the project that's coming up.
Mhm.
And so,
I think that's fair.
we don't wanna raise rates on all four segments to people. Sanitation, obviously, we have to, because we gotta stop the bleeding.
Mhm.
But I probably have to do something on electric to prep for that substation.
Yeah. And it may just, my recommendation would
that's
just be
what I
small
have.
bits at a time, but, that's gonna get you closer to the end result.
Well, and I think education of the public is important, right?
I
We
agree.
need to explain to the folks what's going on and why it's going on, and people can realize that in their home. I mean, if you go to buy gas or diesel fuel or whatever you're running in your car, or you go to buy milk, bread, anything that's packaged that has to do with petroleum, or if you can't even get it, it's not even on the shelf, right? And you would be more than glad to pay 30% more than you paid last week for if you just get damn paper plates or whatever it is, right? So the bottom line is, you know, I guess my point is that they can understand it as long as we explain it to them the best we can. Now, some people aren't gonna get it, they're not gonna be informed, but I think we should, as we go through this, we need to be transparent as we possibly can be of why, but what's in it for me as a taxpayer and a citizen, okay? It means that I have my service and it's, I don't have to worry about it in the future going up 30% at one time or 25% at one time, right? Because in your budget at home, that can be a huge,
Absolutely.
Right.
And you'll be
I
able
think
to
the
fix
problem,
income.
the problem you're gonna hear is you're gonna raise the rates and then the trash service decides what they wanna pick up and what they don't wanna pick up, and then that's gonna throw a fit with the citizens.
well,
You know, you said something out there and then they leave it,
Trash service.
We'll have to deal with two things.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, and then they say, well, you all raise the rates.
well, but that's why we're looking at what we're looking at, right? And so, be careful in third party and stuff, right? And we did it then, it was a savings. I'm not blaming anybody, but now you've gotta go back and check it. As we're checking it, that may be something that goes away, because we've had a lot of complaints about it. Some have been ridiculous complaints, but for the most part, probably 7 out of 10 are pretty legitimate complaints.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I hear them all, see them all, and get them all, I mean, in an email or this or that. I go over and look at it, you know. So, but yeah, well, this is probably this is the most pain for the customer, which is the citizens of Centralia, in seeing a rate for what they consider rude and inconsiderate and not to
Not good
them the
service.
quality of service that they
Yeah.
would expect, what they have to pay for, right? So this is one that I get, I understand it. I'm talking more with electric and stuff like that. We need to address this and figure out how do we make this the best possible we can in this bucket of sanitation, right? That's got its own little dilemma that we're working on. But the other two, that, oh, my electric rate's going up. Well, it's not going up every 3 months. We need to explain to them what these rent increases are gonna look like. and
This will be the hardest one.
This will be the hardest one, absolutely, agreed.
Does every citizen have to do this?
Yeah.
Mm.
If you have,
It's
if
mandatory.
you have water service,
You have to do the
That's
trash.
right.
trash.
Good, because I can see people just putting getting mad and just trash it in their backyard.
Well, we have it
Well,
already.
there's some that do that already.
Well, yeah,
All right, so I'll find out what the magic percentage increase is and I'll let you know. Well,
And, you know, we
that's
might
on
wanna,
Monday.
we might wanna, Mike's chomping at the bit, this guy's been calling us about the trucks and different things, we probably ought to go ahead and vet through that, and I can work with him on that with you.
Yeah.
We can try to get some tonnages and get some ideas,
Okay.
to where we can figure out what we're
There,
gonna do.
there are some really interesting options for trash service these days. One option includes everybody has to have a container. So I don't know if we have to figure out how to get everybody a container. Either they buy a container or we charge, or we provide it. But it's a one-man show and the trash truck goes down the road, picks up the container, dumps it in, and
And
they
these
can
things
do
work.
That
And
would
then
be
crazy amount.
fantastic.
And
They
then it
do
has
a
to,
crazy amount in a short period of
and then,
time.
then it has a front load too, to go do commercial too, if you need to dump the
Yeah.
two.
I don't know if you're aware
Well,
of
and
this, but Columbia's been fighting this battle for,
well, they're
Probably
still
10
fighting
years
it
at
tonight on the
least.
news.
Columbia sends
Yeah.
15 trash trucks down one road.
yeah,
Well,
well,
that-
but what they went to is you pay per bag, and they provide a number
Oh,
of
that's
bags.
different. You have to go get the special
So,
bags.
so what I'm saying, they own the landfill, so, I mean, this is really a touchy
Well, they're having a hard
situation.
time with their recyclables too.
Yeah,
I think their recycling, I don't know, but.
I
if
think
I'm
people use our
suspecting they may use
recycling bin
it.
as a dumpster.
I think my point was, it doesn't matter how big your city is, as a general rule, that is just that's an issue, yeah.
Trashy problem.
Trashy problem.
We'll have more trash conversations.
Let's just dig a hole and burn it all every week.
Okay.
No, because then we're getting, that's no, because then we're gonna have a line of people about smoke in the town. Huge.
So,
You gonna amend that, Dick?
Huh?
You gonna amend that, Dick?
All you gotta do is light on fire and walk away, fire department. Pick your fire down.
Hey, just,
You get that, James?
Maybe we should move on.
all right, capital projects. These are fun stuff. This is the fun projects, the equipment, those kind of things. So we budgeted for $1.8 million this year in capital projects. That actually is not including the remainder of what we have for the wastewater project, which is another, we're probably looking at 2.7 million. So, this amount includes all capital, all of the capital projects for every single fund, including street overlays and sidewalks. What this doesn't, also includes is some renovations to City Hall. We talked about this, in the past, but if
It
we.
does or does not include?
It does. It's about 150,000. I'm hoping that's enough. We'll see, just depending on what ends up happening, but, potentially adding some office space in the community room and no longer having a community room for that use. It would include an office for the chamber and then 2 city offices.
we've talked about that, the chamber being tight here would be a good place where the city government's at. And, they don't have an office presently. And that needs to be, I think, absolutely rectified.
So, if we do end up looking to do that project, we have it in the budget, but, again, this is the board's budget, so if that's a project we wanna move forward with, we can. But we would need to move forward with our, RFQ for engineers so that we can get an engineer to come in. Really like to do a design build project. We have some really talented staff that could, help us with this project, but I wanna make sure that everything's
Is that
on the up and up as
included
far as ADA.
is that including this wall out here that has to be?
No, that's separate, that's in the current budget, we have that money in
Okay,
the
it's
current
accounted
budget.
for, it's accounted for though.
It's accounted for.
Okay.
And then the roof, we've already been paid for the roof, so as soon as we get the wall fixed, we can get the roof fixed. Then we can start replacing ceiling tiles, and that could be part of that budget unless we still have the money from, the roof replacement.
What's the offices? What are the offices gonna be?
Public Works Director would go out there, and then we would just have another one for we don't really have a use for it just yet. It would just be an additional office space. Because with the addition of the finance clerk, the city clerk is now going to share an office with the mayor for a period of time, and
I feel sorry.
they're rooming together. And then, the finance clerk will be sitting up front, so if we did put the public works director office out in the community room area, the city clerk would go back to where Mike sits right now.
Well, it'd be nice to have a conference area, because right now, the mayor's office gets used as a
Yeah.
conference,
And it's-
or for,
and it's
or closed
small.
session,
Yeah,
or whatever it may be. We just don't really have a good area to go with.
I agree.
So maybe we could
People.
do one more office and a conference room. I mean, there are lots of options that we could do.
Well, there's
And-
plenty of room down there.
Well, that's a
too.
lot of
Yeah.
space for just a couple offices, you know.
Well, yes, it is. We thought about, we would use kind of a break room area, we could have it for that as well. And then, since it would be utilized Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, then those doors would stay open. It would be used for public restrooms, because we have the community room restrooms right there. We could still use it for overflow for the board meetings. There would be quite a bit of open space out there, so.
Still use it for like the employee recognition lunches, or if it was a big lunchroom, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
right,
think
we
it
might have
would work for, we
enough room
talked
there.
about that actually, when we were out there,
Yeah.
so yeah, we thought we could still do that.
So,
And the chamber, an office in there for the chamber where you could come in the side door to the chamber office, it'd be right in there as well. The logistics of how you lay it out, right, we gotta get that figured out, but, I think that's an important thing. I think that we need to help the chamber, and I mean, if it means giving them an office space, I'm all on board that. We're giving them money now as a city, right? And so the bottom line is, give them a place to stay and to utilize. And they could also use the conference room too, if they had somebody coming in talking about putting in a business or wanting to move here, or wanting to have a meeting of the business folks coming in, and groups that, you know, that we could use as well. So just we talked through it, kind of brainstorm, so, you know,
Well, she would need like at Anchor Fest and the barbecue contest and different things to have room to count money and all that kind of stuff.
I think there'll be plenty of what we're looking at doing.
Well, I'm just saying, if you have a conference room, she could utilize it
Sure,
that
absolutely.
weekend.
Yeah.
so, just going off of that 1.8 million number that you see there, $355,469 is budgeted for street overlays and sidewalks. I think I have on the next page what portion is what for overlays and sidewalks. We've just been talking, you know, sidewalks have always been an issue with the city, and we haven't done a lot with our sidewalk program. We have a sidewalk program where we do a reimbursement, but a lot of the public sidewalks, well, they're all public sidewalks, but maybe the sidewalks downtown, or they're just, things need to be fixed. And so we are looking, before April 1, having the sidewalk in front of our lot fixed, which I know if we're looking at future building, that may have to come out, but if you're looking 5 years down the road, if we fix that sidewalk now, it serves a great purpose, because we have the farmer's market that'll be down there. We had a meeting with Brad and Callie about reclaimed and the second Saturdays, and it's going to expand. So we're looking at closing off all of Railroad Street from Jefferson to Rollins for second Saturdays. So having that sidewalk fixed or installed is really kind of an important thing. So we may end up doing that entire street, helps just make it look nicer and more accessible. So the other sidewalk project that we are doing, we're going to do a portion of it this current fiscal year, because we have that money budgeted. It'll be from Parkview Court to the pool. And we'll look at some sort of a bridge across that creek. And then in the next fiscal year, we budgeted for either replacement or repair of existing sidewalk from Parkview to Jefferson. So we'll get that fixed. That was something that we had looked at with a potential grant, but I mean, looking at the cost, Mike came up with some of the projected costs for it. We feel like we could fit it in our budget. It comes out of the transportation sales tax, and we don't have to worry about all of the hoops you have to jump through
All
for a grant.
paperwork.
With it being a 50-50 grant or an 80-20 grant, either way, so. Oh, see, I did have it broken down. So this is what, I was talking about, the total overlay, a little over 355,000, sidewalks 31,000, and then asphalt overlay 323. So we're looking at, a little over 2 miles of roadway, and then the sidewalks that we talked about. Last year we did 2.2 miles of roadway for asphalt overlay. This asphalt overlay does include, you guys have a copy of all the streets that we're looking to overlay, but it does include Campbell.
Are you just going to put asphalt right over that road? Because that's only gonna make the flooding problems in that area worse.
Well, we're gonna work on that as well.
We're gonna work on it the best we can. We're actually looking at upsizing pipe on the south side of town best we can. Because you're restricted to your smallest orifice of flow, right? So we're looking and have actually some engineered stuff, looking at flow for us from all the way, is it Cox Street or maybe not Cox, but across down through Lakeview almost south.
So I'm good now.
Gano, yeah, and Gano all down through there, right?
Allen
The big
too.
problem we have is that water running off the field over there. You've got a huge amount, and so it really clogs things up. But we're absolutely looking at that. I think that, the key thing, to talk about Campbell Street, we looked at trying to curb and gutter it. We wanted to do it right, right? But there's no, the houses are lower than the street almost, right? So we have to deal with what the developer has left us with, and so all we're gonna be able to provide is an overlay street, but the base will have to be proper. I mean, we're not gonna do something that's gonna last a year and then it's falling
Well,
apart.
that's why I was asking, I'm
Yeah, we're
sorry.
not gonna do anything like that, we're gonna do it right, and we're gonna offer to all those residents down through the street, a cost to connect to their concrete or whatever at a price, a set price. They can choose to do that or not. Otherwise, we'll address the apron, where the transition from the side of the road to, like we've done with the other streets over in Lakeview is a good example of that.
And our capital projects fund, not the street overlay fund, but the regular capital projects fund, does address the ditch in front of the high school. That's something that we've been talking about for a while, and feel that it is a safety hazard, the way that sidewalk goes. We've actually had people kind of fall into that ditch, just walking sidewalks. I don't know if they weren't paying attention or what, but still, so we're looking at enclosing all of that ditch, so it won't be so deep. And Dr. Chancellor's on board with that. Okay, so this is just our general fund discussion, $16.1 million, almost $2 million in estimated expenditures. That does include 600 and some thousand in the general fund for reserves and contingency, and 745 in the electric fund for reserves. So these are interfund transfers that we look at every year. Electric fund to the general fund and to the cemetery fund, those numbers have not changed in several years. The water fund to the general fund has not changed either. We're looking at, and then public safety sales tax, that is the portion that we transfer to the general fund for police and fire. So we're looking at 223,000, so I think that. And then we have that small reserve fund. So the reserve, so if we put the 24,609 into that reserve fund this year, then if everything comes out as projected, we'll have 123,000 in that fund. So we are building that up slowly but surely. ARPA funding, right now I only have so 76,000. That's for the finance clerk for the first year, and then something else. I'll have to figure out what that other part is. And then this sewer fund, 100,000 for the sewer main lining. That was the only things that we had really talked about, and that sewer main lining has not been set yet, but I am anticipating that that's a project we might be able to move forward with. If not, I'll just take it out. So it'll let me know. And then from park to pool, and then from park to the golf course. The park budget is included in the draft budget, but I don't have final numbers from Earl yet, and they set their own budget. The library budget is also included, but I haven't gotten the final one from them. yet. So, general fund, our target reserves is 16%. Right now, we're estimated at 17.7%. So, of that, contingency fund, 178,457 set aside for development of Randolph Road, Wiggum Street, Chance Drive, and then sidewalks at Wiggum. That sidewalks at Wiggum was added this year because the Barella subdivision that was passed through planning and zoning, we allowed him to put about $4,800 in escrow, and then we will install the sidewalks, and he has already paid that, so that's why that was added. So, you guys have any questions? No? Alright. So, the only special revenue fund that I included was a cemetery, and the reason I wanted to talk about this is because it did pop up in our audit that it was one of the significant funds, and normally it's not. And the only reason it's significant, I believe, is because we had a really large donation a few years ago from an estate. And that donation was to go towards upkeep, not general upkeep, not the mowing of the cemetery and things like that, but replacing old headstones, repairing foundations, things like that. So this budget right now does not include an amount set for doing those things, but I would like to start including it every year so that we can start repairing some of the headstones that are fallen over, and things like that. So I would like some input on that, what you all think would be an appropriate amount every year to start budgeting for that kind of thing.
What's it take a year, you think? What would be a good yearly?
I mean, if we did like 10,000 a year for
10,000
a
a year?
while,
Take care of that?
I mean, we could do quite a bit with that, I think. That, after talking to Phyllis, I mean, she felt like that was reasonable, maybe 10 to 15. Maybe we can start with 10 and see how that goes this year, and if that doesn't get us very much, we can look at next year to increase it.
Citizens of Centralia would like that.
Yeah, and that's what the donation was for, so, I mean, it makes sense to be able to do that. I don't wanna eat it all up right off the bat, but, I mean, if we look at 10,000 a year over 10 years, that's quite a bit.
We would like that too, when they bury us over the trash increase, see we're gonna.
Well, we follow that fire pit.
So I did not break down the enterprise funds. If there's something that we want to talk about individually, we can. Water fund obviously has higher revenues during our current fiscal year, and so does the sewer, but that is because of our bond issues, and we're getting money from our loan, and then we're paying it out. So our expenditures are higher and our revenues are higher, but that's that large capital project. It should go back down in water will go back down, obviously, this year in 22-23, but sewer will go back down in 23-24, so. Any questions about the enterprise fund? We're continuing with our equipment replacement. It's typically about every 10 years, but if we have any trucks that are still in really good shape, they don't have a lot of miles, we're maybe gonna stretch it out to 12 years on those pieces of equipment. We've been talking about, we're doing a dump truck shuffle. So we're taking one from the water department, giving it to the street department. No, I have this written down somewhere. Anyway, there's one, the water department, street department, and electric department all have a dump truck. One of them's getting sold, we're buying a new one, street department gets the new one, it's gonna have a plow attachment and a spreader attachment, and then they're shuffling the other dump trucks.
Yes, sir.
Did they budget a spreader for the 1 ton,
Uh-huh.
They
Oh,
did?
no, wait. I
for the
don't,
little truck,
I have a spreader budgeted,
for the little truck?
20,000, I don't
It's
Not
know.
for a big truck.
I thought it was a big truck.
We ought to budget one for the little truck.
Is that truck going somewhere else? Is that a dump truck?
It's
It's the little white one.
Little white 1 ton dump truck.
It's a 1 ton dump truck. It's pretty handy. Really neat.
Be perfect for cul-de-sacs.
But that truck, that might be,
The one
That's not a dump truck going to.
there's a dump truck going to.
Because I'd say they're gonna
electric.
sell the dump truck that's at the electrical department. They're gonna take the red dump truck
There's a red one and a white one, and I asked them if we could get a blue one, and they said no.
The red one will probably go to electrical, and the water will probably get the used one from the street department, would be my guess.
That might be right. So I do not, let's see, I do have a spreader
Well, that's usually
budget.
how that works.
Yeah, you're on top of it.
Because the one at the electric department now does not have a plow
We need to
attachment.
probably go to truck.
Okay. That might be what they budgeted the spreader for. I'll double check.
For the little truck.
Yeah, the attack, yeah. I'll find out. Cause they told me 20,000 for it. For one.
Truck.
And I have two 20,000, so I think one of them is for it. But I'll find out for sure.
No big equipment scheduled to buy.
No, we're still waiting on our little wing, so we'll have to buy that. That's budgeted out of this current fiscal year. But I think we'll end up paying for it out of next fiscal year. City Hall improvements are budgeted half out of the electric fund and half out of City Hall, out of the general fund, so 75 each. There's a skid loader trade that they're gonna do as well, so we're looking at 60, we have that budgeted capital for electric department, but they're gonna sell one, so it's gonna offset the cost a lot, we believe. Next year, they're looking at a track hoe. Oh, the electric department is buying a stump grinder, so we can start doing our own stump grinding.
That's a good deal.
Yeah. We don't have any other, the water meter replacement's big, we don't have any other big big equipment. I mean, we had $3,500 for a replacement locator in the water department. They wanted a jackhammer attachment and a bar saw, I mean, just some smaller items. The street department seemed like they we still have, we'll be on our second year of our 4-year plan for the patrol vehicles. We still have money budgeted for the animal holding facility. That's something that we really need to look at doing. So we're gonna get together with
Is it $20,000, is that correct?
45. It started out at 20 something,
Well, I
20 or
thought
25. and then-
45 now?
Yeah, it's 45
Good,
now.
very good.
We're in year 3 of our 4-year contract for the street sweeper. They're going to do spreader stands to make it easier to load the spreaders onto the trucks. Right now, what they have is not very safe, so they're going to increase the safety on that.
Just back under.
So, that's it.
Whoa, good.
What's that?
That's my 6-year-old headshot.
Pretty old for 6 years old.
Look, yeah, she's reigning over the whole building.
Do you have any questions? There's my phone number, my email, website.
So very nice,
So
Heather,
if
good
we're
job.
5 to 10 years away for PD, what about some of the upgrades that we need to do in that building? Securing a few doors, or that secondary hallway, cell, how do we make, do we need 10 grand, 20 grand to make some 5-year improvements?
Which building?
What?
The police.
Police department. I didn't see much on the capital budget for the police department.
I'm gonna need to.
No, and I might have just included a lot of that in just their general budget.
Do you have a
So
restroom
didn't do
over
it as
there?
capital.
Is there
Mhm.
one?
As soon as you walk in the door and turn right, it's right
That
there.
takes you outside?
Just before the chief's office.
Exactly.
But if you're in the hallway cell, there's
Yeah.
no restroom.
Yeah, that's great to get all of us.
It's the one bathroom for the entire building.
Yeah.
And if you reach correctly, you can get to the forks.
Okay, so let's see what we've budgeted. We've had a lot of discussions about it.
Did we need to mark other things off on that ARPA thing, or is that later? Because I saw that it was.
I would really like for you guys to like just think about it and then maybe bring some suggestions
Maybe
on
we should all
Monday.
prioritize them. Put a number by
Yeah, if
Like
everybody
13.
prioritize them and I can compile that list, whatever, I have
You know what I'm saying,
priorities
everybody
are,
can
but-
look at it, we talked about a lot of it, and we talked about the solar.
Just figure what priority we're gonna do it with. Good idea.
Okay. A couple of things about police is, we talked about training, and, you know, Marmot University offers free training, which is great, but then there's a lot that you can get out of, you know, as far as networking and other, like, conference type training, and so, as much as possible, we're gonna encourage, you know, some of that type stuff for his officers. Anything you wanna add, Chief?
Well, I mean, I've been talking and trying to stay in contact with my friends in Columbia, and there's some training that will be coming up that's pretty local. You can go to that. But, you know, they're busy with their in-service trainings going on there, and I think other people use their training facility. And MIRMA training really is geared towards keeping insurance companies safe, right? I mean, so that's not necessarily what I'm looking to get out of saving the insurance companies hind end versus my cops hind end when they're on the street by themselves. So, you know, there's some different options out there. There's some different input that could be taken on what that means. But, you know, I would like to get our police department up and running, our equipment up and running, to where we don't have to keep budgeting, you know, or purchasing things that, you know, that are 5 or 10 year items or stuff like that. So, training is just another component of how professional you want your police department to be.
How much are those spike strips for each car we talked about?
I'm gonna have to do. I would say between $300 and $500.
That wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. So like I said, a lot of the stuff that I've talked about with Heather is like right now. Let's say a long gun being a .223 rifle and a shotgun. Those two items should be in the cars at all the time, in my opinion. Now, the shotguns are in the car, but the way that they are affixed in the car is unacceptable to me.
You can't get them out.
Well, they
In the
let's just
trunk?
kinda, not really, but kinda.
Yeah.
It's just not
Right
safe.
there with the prisoner.
Yeah.
That's another thing. We have one cage, I think, to transport people in. Every car should have a cage. Every car should have a rifle and shotgun rack. I mean, these are just every car should have a less lethal gun. But these are just basic things that the local agencies have that we don't.
We've never heard that.
And a lot of the things that he's bringing to me, you know, like the uniforms, you know, we looked through the budget, we found some areas that they still had quite a bit of money that has not been utilized in the budget for a while now. So they were able to get all new uniforms. That speaks to the professionalism, you know, of all the officers. And,
Today I sat down and audited our badges. Some police officers have one, some have two, some badges are completely missing, some are damaged, some, you know, I can't use because they don't have numbers on them. I mean, so I sent all of them to Sun Badges today, and they're going to send me back a quote about what it takes to just get those replenished. I mean, we're down to the point where, you know, the clasp on one is broken. I can't use that.
Handguns as well, I mean, we're talking about $20,000 goes a long way in a lot of this stuff that you've been talking about to her.
Yeah, so like just for instance, the shotgun / rifle racks are about $2,500 to outfit all of our cars. They'll come here and do it. They'll bring them. And so I'm like, to me, that's in the realm of policing equipment and securing items that are, if they were stolen, I mean, it's a really small cost to me.
Well, and the insurance value too, of protecting her to be a better situation or better setup for handling and
Yeah.
control and all that kind of stuff, but,
Can we turn part of your thing into a museum? And then we could charge and make some money. 'Cause it sounds like there's a nostalgic
What you don't know right now, it is a museum.
So I guess, is there a way we can squeeze a shot in the arm for the PD
I think
in
so.
the budget?
Here's what I would say.
How
and
much
some of
do
this
you
other
think?
stuff.
I would say $1.5 million will get me going. No, I'm kidding. What I'll say is this.
Bye, Harlan.
What I'll say is this.
When are we posting a new police chief?
I am not doing that.
We were all thinking $1 million.
Boy, that took a long time. What I would say is, just give us another couple months to look, I mean, because to be honest with you,
Yeah.
Heather and you guys have been really good about saying, just do this. So we're moving that direction, and just give us a time to, I mean, these are few items that I'll bring to you and say, hey, is this good to go or is it not good to go?
So
And then we
it's
could budget that
time,
item
So
out.
if we could squeeze 40 or 50 grand in for some facility upgrades and the rest of the equipment, you don't have to spend it
Then as you
now.
find it,
As you
we
come
say.
up with
It's
the
already
deals and the
budgeted.
things we wanted in the budget,
Should've
that's all.
already
it is.
been done.
So if there's a way we can
Neglect on us.
find
Didn't he have any battery
somewhere
operated
to do
tools?
something, 'cause I
In
think, I
budget?
mean,
What?
we
So
need
didn't he have any battery operated tools in budget?
I mean, he always has stuff budgeted, but he never uses it, so I just keep adding that same amount. So yes, but it's not anything specific listed. How much are we talking?
Well, like the extrication tools were like $36,000, and there was a demo unit.
Yeah, he didn't tell
And
me
they got
any of
one on the
that.
back of their truck that's from the Mayflower.
They go to the museum, to make sure.
That's what we're gonna turn when we build the building,
that's what we use that.
we can just make that a museum.
But that was something that they're gonna need eventually out at 22 and Route B.
Yep, I'll meet with Denny and see what we need to do there. I did have some stuff budgeted. I'm trying to find what we did in the police budget. I don't know. We can definitely move some things and add that for,
Yeah, and I know we may not know exactly what we wanna spend it on, but I'd rather put a little bit extra in there right now, and if we don't spend it, great, but if we need to, I don't wanna try to rob Cheater and pay Paul next year if we don't
And
have.
on a side note, Maria Logan is who I contacted about the evidence locker, and she's coming on board probably in the next week or so. So hopefully we'll get a good idea where I'm going to be with that evidence room and how much of it we can get rid of, how much we can get back to citizens that need it back or should deserve to have it back or whatever the case.
I think Robert's point's good. You don't know what you need yet, but we know there's gonna be need, because we need to bring it up to what at least minimally satisfactory,
Heather, there's
if
a
not better, right? So
$50,000 for the charging
we gotta
stations.
get that point. We don't want it to be a problem at all. I mean, it shouldn't be
Yep.
anyway, but just a budget
I
a
mean,
little bit. We
that's-
want you to have the freedom to keep coming to us
public
and
safety.
let's get that where it needs to be.
Yeah.
I think it's really important.
I mean,
Very important.
that's not gonna cost that much to put charging stations in the, whatever I'm trying to say.
Let me ask you a question. Now, all these racks and stuff like that, then
Yeah,
when we trade the vehicle, we
Yeah.
can take the rack out to put into the next unit.
I'll have to get back to you. I don't know that they're universal because all the interiors of cars are different. So, but like I said, at the end of the day, there might be a smaller department out there we can sell that unit to that'll fit their car
Just saying,
or
something
whatever.
maybe to consider, if we're using Durango, we're happy with them, then you stay with the Durango, and typically you can get 3 to 4 years of a range if something fits, typically
Yeah.
accessorized.
And that's a question I can ask my buddy in Columbia. He
Yeah.
handles all the
Just to
fleet.
know how we manage that cost moving forward the best, right?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Heather, on this list,
On the ARPA list.
Yeah,
you're gonna be able to see anything.
you can turn the light on if you want. I can turn this off.
We have our pictures there now.
The community bathroom, so we're taking that off for now.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, so there's another 50,000.
But
And it's gonna
our
go to something else.
Well, yeah, but
In fact,
car upgrades or doors, secure doors, would those fit into the ARPA definition or not?
Possibly. But I mean, the less lethal weapons definitely would, so, I mean, if we have something else that we can,
The early definition was a little restrictive, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly. I don't
the
even-
final rule is supposed to be much broader, but I still haven't read through all of it, it's a lot. So, yeah, we're gonna take out the community bathrooms there.
The solar benches are
The
gone
solar
too.
benches, that's
Yeah.
49,000. What about the outdoor park and activity area at the golf course?
Should have a park at the golf course, not that.
Huh?
Should have a park at the golf course.
Well, I think they were doing it as a park for those kids on that side of town.
Like, I'll put the park behind the trailer court.
We don't own all of that land there. The trailer court doesn't. And if he wants to gift it to us, though, we will.
Who was him?
The guy that owns it.
Sabitio.
Satish. We also talked about dash cameras for the CPD vehicles. That's not necessarily something that we have to do. Opinions kind of go back and forth about it.
What I would say is there's been some discussion of departments moving away from dash cams and just going to straight body cams. I think what you lose is some of the data that would come from speeds. It's one-dimensional viewing, in my opinion. Some of them are, you'll get a complete around the car view of what's going on, but that's a cost that's considerable for storage of data. Keep making sure you got a data dump point on the building for when you pull up, it dumps all the data into the system. So I mean, you could probably get as elaborate as you want, but body cameras can fulfill, I would say, a large portion of that. You're going to see maybe not as much as you one-dimensionally forward that you would from a dash cam, but you would still get to see dash. You would hear what's going on. You'd be able to see the dash cluster. So I mean, opinions vary, and you'll see that it varies across the nation what people have. So I mean, that's obviously the national outcry is documenting what police do.
Don't we have that wing where it dumps over at the police station? They pull up in front and
No, they take their body cams and they put it into them now.
oh, I thought they
Or
could dump
download
into
They're
the
downloading.
download. Oh,
So it's not.
we must have talked about it sometime.
We probably talked about it, but I mean, they that holder that's on.
Yeah, there's a base for them to be plugged. It dumps the data and then also charges the unit.
So are we talking just not doing dash cameras? and
No,
just
that's not what I'm
body?
saying. I said a company or several departments have talked about going away. Columbia has talked about going away from dash
What
cameras.
do you want?
I've got nothing to hide, so if you want to put cameras on the cars,
What would be more beneficial?
What's Columbia's
$1.5 million.
motivation?
what's that?
What's Columbia's motivation to go away
Cost.
from?
I mean, cost
Them lucky.
And I think
Because
it's
the technology is constantly
Upgrade.
upgrading, and it's hard to
3
stay.
years,
up
you're
to-
way.
So right now, we have a lease agreement on those body cams, and then they're gonna be replaced in another, 3 years or so, 2 or
What's
3
Centralia
years.
need? I mean, what do we need? 'Cause
I'm sure you're going to run the gambit of opinion about what Centralia needs. From what I've seen over the last 6-8 weeks, I don't necessarily think we need dash cameras. I would say those are largely for bigger cities that,
Well,
that are
Doesn't
involved.
sound like you're
That-
wanting to follow a stake over this thing. It's,
Oh, no.
this is not a passionate thing for you
No.
one way or the
A
other.
matter of fact, Murma said they would buy one a year if we met certain criteria
Well,
now.
but then you've got the cost of meeting that criteria to satisfy them for an insurance purpose.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
That's.
Trying to
there you go.
convey. So-
I mean, we need to talk
So
about that.
maybe upgrading body cameras,
As a city,
who
too.
knows? I mean, the ones that we have now are recording and they're durable. There might be some other option for holders because those things are magnetic. That could fall right off. I mean, then your camera doesn't mean anything.
Because what was it, last year, or was it 2 years? It was 2 years ago we got new,
I think it was 2 years ago, we got
New
new
body
body
cameras.
cameras.
And they're due, do we
I
have
thought we got
4-year,
5-year.
5-year lease on that?
Yeah,
something like
Yeah.
that.
I thought it was 5.
I mean, if body cams don't make where you would wanna, or I mean, dash cams don't make the, the top 10 list for you, then I wouldn't wanna spend the money for it.
Yeah.
And when I think about some of the things we've encountered as a city, there's maybe one that it might have been beneficial to have that. a dash cam on, but we have plenty of cell phone coverage on it, so.
Actually, probably at some point, some of
We
those,
had a dash cam on that too.
cell cameras are gonna be better than the cameras that we're putting on us. So, I mean,
Yeah.
every time that iPhone or Samsung comes out with a new phone, it's got the top camera in it, so
And then
the cameras we're using are decent, they're just,
already been done.
you know, it all comes down to data storage
Been done, it's just-
and that kind of stuff, is where
Yeah,
cost
but
comes
the
in.
rewriter position is, I broke it out and I did have
Right.
this guy.
But if you guys want us to number these
Yeah.
as we feel important,
Right, well, those are the
those
only
are
ones
the that are already,
that's the only
so
ones
we
we
don't
have.
need to like.
No,
Okay.
and the library really could use those mobile hotspots. I know it's not a very big dollar item, but it would help them a lot. Those are checked out all the time.
And it's big for the community. I mean,
Yeah.
that should be a slam dunk, in my opinion.
Yeah, that should be,
Yeah, they really are utilized a lot, so.
it's almost like the internet to the rural areas.
It is for-
For people to have that.
And you want this by next Monday or?
Yeah, if you can have it next Monday. We won't finalize the budget until the March meeting, so we technically have 2 committee meetings left to still talk about things and change things. So, really value your input, so anything that you guys have that you wanna see different or help with, let me know.
The water bottle stations, that will be just in the parks, right?
Yeah, and that was, it was a suggestion during that initial meeting, we haven't really, I don't know that we've really revisited it a whole lot.
There were concerns about them freezing and breaking.
Yeah, I mean, we could just put them here at City Hall, if you wanted to do something like that, or we don't even have to do that, I mean,
But then
they're
they
not
said
that expensive, we
disconnect
could,
them during the winter. That's what somebody said, right?
Yeah,
You
they
could
would have to.
disconnect them at winter, so you didn't have to worry about that.
Well, Terry Harper probably charges us to come in and disconnect them,
We
but
got a
yeah.
water department.
yeah,
to do
water
that.
department for that.
Yeah, they'll do that. We,
So we could, yes, we could absolutely do that. Or, if we don't have to use this money for that project, if they're only $8,000, then we can just budget one a year over the next 4 years and do that. I
somewhere
don't,
I mean, I could see
preferably
buying
where
one, trying one out to see how it works.
yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Trying
There's people
one.
who walk all around town, so there's benefits of it.
So, where are we at in the fund discussion? We're gonna do our list, it looks like it's where we're at on the ARPA money. Any other questions or thoughts or anything else you wanna give us tonight?
Other than adding something for the police department ahead of time?
No, understood, yeah, I think that
Yeah.
that's a takeaway from this, right?
Yeah.
That's a to-do for you to kinda look at and maybe try to put, you and you guys talking. So anyway,
And the sanitation, you were gonna give us
Mhm.
what that magic percentage
And
is.
maybe
As
check with
as
Denny
painful as it
on
will
his
be.
needs.
I can email you as well, let you know ahead
and,
of time, so.
yeah,
Are you checking with the fire department too, on needs or anything?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
and that Jaws Alive thing or whatever, tractor.
We had a budget meeting and Denny came to it, but he didn't give me anything, so.
Very resourceful.
Yeah, I think he's very resourceful.
Yeah.
All
Well,
of,
they just- I mean,
the
they-
whole fire department really is, I
And we
mean,
just gave them, I mean, they got all new equipment.
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't say all, a lot of new equipment.
Right.
So they're
the
probably.
turnout gear and the SCBA's, which, that came in handy whenever the
Oh, yeah.
laundromat caught on fire, they were.
On the house fire.
Really,
Yeah,
it was
so
really,
they were using that.
I'm really glad we've got to that point,
Absolutely.
because those people were using hand-me-down stuff that Columbia wouldn't even use, so, what do you expect, so, what's that mean? Okay, so are we good for me to go on to the next thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, that moves us at this point to number 12, as may arise. Do we have any as may arise? I didn't have anything from, any emails or anything from anybody. Okay, with that, then I would accept a motion to adjourn.
I'm making a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And it was seconded by Terry.
We
You were too
did.
slow. So anyway, we are adjourned.